Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, "Scam Me for $80 for cleaning on move out?" I don't think so, Jack. Background: about 10 years ago my landlord died. Or at least the person who owned the place we were renting. The property managers had been delightful, but whoever inherited wanted to sell, so the house was for sale. Enter a jackass, we'll call him Jack, who decides to buy the place. Now ours was the top floor, that is attic converted into a suite, of a house, less than 35 square meters, 375 square feet. The bathroom was literally where the stairs up to the top floor used to be. The place was tiny. Jack came to check out the place, as you should before buying a place. He had one of those Bluetooth earpieces in and I can't even remember if he even acknowledged us. He spent about 30 to 45 seconds in our suite. Next time we hear from him is about a month later, apparently he'd bought the place. He stops by to give us a notice of rent increase, effective in 6 months, legal minimum. From $485 to $795. The place is not worth that much. We say nuts to that and decide to buy a house, since it's not much more per month. Surprise to anyone who's never bought a house, it was more than just mortgage payments. We give him all the required notice to move out. We move, and clean the place up really well. Mind you, when my partner moved in it was not especially clean, and we happen to have the move-in inspection which mentions this. Jack decides to try to scam us for $80 of our damage deposit for cleaning. He doesn't provide the required forms, just says, "I'm going to hold $80 from your damage deposit for cleaning." We respond with, no. You're not. Jack, assuming we need the cash for our next damage deposit or bills and will settle for anything, "Take this or I'm going to keep your whole deposit." Cue revenge, so he decides to just keep the whole deposit, $485. I file paperwork with the rentals man, who unsurprisingly, after their investigation, rule in my favor. He's ordered to refund the whole deposit. But Jack decides not to pay. And the rentals man doesn't have any enforcement powers. So I have to go to the local sheriff's office. They can send a legal demand letter for the deposit plus costs. But it will cost me $100 minus $150, I forget, up front. Sure, go ahead. Jack decides to ignore the sheriff's kindly letter. Sheriffs say that they can start proceedings to recover the debt plus costs, but I again have to pay up front, about $250, and it might take quite a while. I guess most people quit at this point. Being out of pocket $700, throwing more money at the problem and maybe having to wait months didn't appeal to them. And there's also a chance you never collect. I chose to pay the sheriffs. They sent another, less friendly letter to Jack. But here's the best part: now that they're recovering a debt, they're going to recover on all of the outstanding judgments against him. And apparently he has tried this crap before. They send him another couple letters, pay up or else. Jack chose else. Then they seize title to Jack's giant white SUV, I can't remember what it was, but not a cheap one. They didn't physically take it away or anything, but they gave him 30 days to pay all the judgments against him or they would take it and sell it at auction. Somehow he all of a sudden found the money. My share, $485 plus $150 plus $250 equals $885. The other people who'd registered judgments, but not paid to start the collections processes were about $5,000 more. I can't remember how long the whole process took, at least 6 months though. The next one is titled, "I rented a fake apartment, and accidentally got pro-revenge." So this happened a long time ago. It was November 2009, and I was jamming to "I Got a Feeling" by the Black Eyed Peas, looking for a cheap apartment. I find a great ad in Craigslist, and arrange for a viewing. I meet the landlady, a portly shrew with a Betty Page haircut. I wasn't here for the company however, but for the cheap room. It's not great looking, but it is cheap, so I tell her I am interested. She tells me the place is mine if I can get a deposit by end of day. Sweet. I rip to the bank and grab the $450 needed, a half a month's rent. She and I cross-sign a standard lease, and ask when I can get a key to move in, and she says a couple days as the current tenant has yet to collect all of their stuff. So, I am sleeping on the couch at a buddy's pad for now, and so I just chill, seeing sights, enjoying the first few weeks in a new city. A couple days roll by, and I haven't heard from the landlady, so I get frustrated and leave a few salty voicemails, but alas, I was ghosted. Finally she leaves me a voicemail and says she's sorry, but she cannot rent the place to me. I start to get angry. But I am a pretty cool customer, so I do the research, find out my rights in an unfamiliar new municipality, and discover that if someone backs out of a lease without a legal reason, the other party is entitled to double the deposit they placed, so I figure, she owes me about $900 clams. I leave more messages and emails. Again with the ghosting, not answering the phone, no responses via email either. I get fed up. Now, I had just accepted a new job, but it didn't start until the turn of the month. I would guess it's about the third week of November 2009. I have some spare time, so I hop on the bus, buy a magazine, and sit at the bus stop across from the rental house, and just wait. And wait. For a couple hours I waited, but man was it worth it. I see her showing the unit to another smart mark. I hold my cool, and wait for her to finish with her newest renter, and make my way over to the house to confront her. As soon as she sees me, she starts to wail about how the tenant changed their mind, blah blah blah, and that's why she couldn't rent to me. I've heard enough. I square my stance directly opposite this clearly upset charlatan. Now you listen to me, you will get me $900 as required by law by the end of the day, or I will go directly to the police station and let them deal with you. She turned white. For a minute I thought she was going to puke on the ground right there in front of me. She says, "Hold on, I will get you your money." I remember thinking, that was easier than I thought. She goes upstairs, the unit was a basement unit in the house she was living in, and hands me a wad of cash and says, "Here, this is ruining my Christmas, but here." She almost pushed me off balance as she jammed the messy wad of cash into me. "Thank you." "Good day," I say and take the money, count it, and walk away. I didn't turn around and look back, got on the first bus that stopped nearby heading back toward the direction of my friend's house. Not until I was home did I calm down and realize it was going to be a sweet Christmas, all thanks to a lying phony cheapskate. However, this is not the end of the revenge. About a week later, I get a phone call from a friend asking me if the lady in the news is the same crazy lady I got the double damage deposit from. I'm like, what? Sure enough, it turns out this lady was running the same scam in parallel with a bunch of other victims. I am mortified, not just because I almost got scammed, but it immediately occurs to me that the money I got was someone else's money, and they are homeless for the holidays. I head right down to the police station, where there is a line of crying people filing reports about being scammed by this woman. I feel awful, and when it's my turn, I get to the intake officer, and start to give my story. I lay it all down, how I fell for it, how I left a snotty voicemail, how I staked out the rental to confront her, my demand of double the money back, my threats of legal action against her, and finally the skillful execution of the law by getting double the deposit back. I tell the cop, I took some of the money that belonged to the other victims, and she looks at me and says, "Man, you were the only one smart enough to confront her in a reasonable way, you earned that money. Don't worry about it." A young lady who was now homeless and desperate couldn't help but overhear, and as I am leaving the police station, she approaches me and says, "Hey, did you get your money back from that witch?" To which I sheepishly reply, "Actually I got double my deposit from her when I threatened her with the police." The girl blinks a couple times, and finally grins, starts a slow clap, and announces to the other victims still waiting to give a statement in the lobby of the police station, "This guy took her for double the damage deposit." I cringed. But then, in the most unexpected turn of events, the line of victims began applauding, I suppose with the realization that while their money was gone, someone had really screwed her back, and that made them happy. They cheered, I felt better, the cops laughed, and we all, there had to be 20 people in all, had a joyful cosmic moment of holiday schadenfreude at her expense. I left the police station with a clean conscience and a smile on my face, and enjoyed every last penny of that worthless bitch's nasty stack. The next one is titled, Birthday Present to Ex-Wife. Gather round boy and girls because it's time for the story of my cheating ex-wife and how I ducked her. Now bear with me as this is a bit of a long one, but duck it. So I had a feeling she was cheating as she set off a lot of red flags. Constantly laughing and smiling when texting, saying it was just her mother when I asked. Needing to stay late every night after work. When I'd call in, her coworkers said she left hours ago. When I asked her what was going on, she'd laugh it off and say it was just something they did to each other at the office all the time. The last straw to where I knew something was definitely up was when she went out to get milk at 11:30 at night and didn't come back till 2 in the morning. Now, if there is any words of wisdom I can pass on to others in all my years of experience, it's if you think your significant other is cheating, hire a ducking private investigator. They're goddamn good at what they do and they will get some evidence that really helps in the later divorce. Fast track to her birthday, several months down the road. Now I know what you're thinking, why the hell did I wait months before I confronted her, and did it really need to be on her birthday? The answer to the first question is I wanted as much evidence as possible to hand off to my lawyer, as well as make arrangements to find a new place to live, etc. Answer to your second question is of course it had to be on her birthday. You see, after asking her what she wanted to do on her birthday this year, she was rather insisted on me going out of town with my friends as she just had to work anyways and didn't want to be reminded she was aging. So I know something is up, and after finding a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses hidden in my closest something in my snaps. So I do what any sensible man would have done. I leave and go to my friend's house pretending like I am going out of town. While there I call up her mother, father, sister and several of her friends. I tell them how I want to give her a big surprise by sneaking into her room with party streamers, kazoos and a big cake with candles. Sounds fun, right? Well, boy was it. It's 8:30 in the morning and I have everyone met just outside our apartment. We all pile in the elevator, about 8 of us in total, her mother holding the cake and me reminding everyone to be as quiet as they can be. Put my key in and unlock the door, we all sneak in and make our way down the hall towards the bedroom. Each hold a kazoo and mum holding the cake, grinning from ear to ear. Well, as I throw open the door and we all yell surprise. But the surprise was on us, and there was my wife, bent over in doggy-style position with her lover staring at us wide-eyed mid-thrust. Mum drops the cake, sister screams, father begins to shout. I pretend like I'm horrified, to which her friends try to push everyone out while yelling at her. Wife, excuse me, ex-wife is sobbing and screaming how could I, while the lover is desperately trying to put his pants on while running out of the place. Needless to say, it was one of the best birthday presents I have ever given. The next one is titled, Threaten Me, You Pay. One way or another. I used to work for a company that rented furniture and appliances with no credit checks. My job was to get renters to make their payments, or if they couldn't, arrange to have them return the products. The place where I worked was fairly remote. We basically served 4 small towns, 2 of them 2 hours drive away from the store. One of the towns was located next to a state prison, so many of our customers were ex-cons who needed to furnish their homes for cheap after getting out. Most of them were good customers, but enough of them tried to use scare tactics that I quickly got inured to them. We also had a customer who was a sheriff's deputy. He liked renting stuff because it meant he and his wife could redecorate whenever they wanted. One day, a guy comes in and buys an expensive leather living room set for cash. When the guys delivered it, they saw that he had a huge, brand new house on several acres of land. Knowing this, the next time he came in, this time to rent, my manager let him rent pretty much an entire house full of stuff. He never made a single payment on it. He lived in one of the towns 2 hours away, so I had to try to collect over the phone, mostly. I kept expecting him to just change his number, but he never did. Instead, he'd answer his phone and curse and threaten me, asking if I knew who he was. I didn't, but I found out a couple of months later. This guy was the #1 drug dealer in his little town, so we'll call him DD from here out. It was a pretty open secret, so we heard this from several other customers. Now, this wasn't just about the money and my collection numbers, the guy had threatened me. Normally when this happened, I'd just drive to the person's house, which was usually a trailer, to call his bluff, knowing that our delivery truck could crush a trailer if things turned violent. It never did though. That wouldn't work on DD, since his house was brick and surrounded by a brick wall, so I formed a plan. The next time our deputy customer came in, I asked him if he knew of DD. I did not explain why, but the deputy probably suspected that DD owed us money. He said he didn't know DD, but he could check if the guy had any outstanding warrants. That seemed unlikely, since DD was pretty easy to find in the town, but I said sure, check for me. DD had a bench warrant for a failure to appear in court for a traffic ticket. The deputy asked if I had DD's address, and I gave it to him. Our contract specifically said that we could release customer info to law enforcement in the event of non-payment, so this was not illegal or a violation of policy. The deputy couldn't get a search warrant for a traffic violation, but he could wait until DD left his house, pull him over, and arrest him. Unfortunately, DD didn't leave home often, and the sheriff's department was spread too thin to stake him out for the time required to catch him. Plus, since DD's house was on the outskirts of town, it would be hard for the cops not to be seen, anyway. I was going to have to give the cops a little help. I started letting customers from that town know that if they saw DD and let me know, I'd give them extensions on their payments. I was allowed to give 2-week extensions at my discretion, and people always liked being allowed to put off their payments. It took less than a week before someone saw DD going into the town's only movie theater. Perfect. I called the deputy, let him know, and he had plenty of time to get there and catch DD leaving. Since DD had a warrant, the deputy could arrest him on the spot, and an arrested suspect was automatic probable cause for a search of the vehicle. Naturally, the cops found drugs in DD's car, which got him a warrant for his house, where he had tons more, and DD went to prison. Since there was stolen property, our stuff, in the house when they searched it, the cops called the rightful owners and allowed us in to collect it too. The last one is titled, Maintenance Guy Throws Out 15 Years of Important Knowledge. A while ago I worked at a baseball store called Bal Mart, or a general goods store that sounded like that, not so long after the Great Recession of 2008, and management was trying to cut costs because of falling profit. One of the first things management did was fire 2 of the 3 full-time maintenance, cleaning guys. The one guy they kept, I'll call him MG for maintenance guy, was amazing at his job. Everything in the store ran well because of him and his willingness to go beyond what was required to help people. A genuinely nice guy. For 6 months management tried to make having 1/3 of a maintenance staff work, and it failed miserably. MG could not do everything, and over time management increasingly asked him to coordinate some part-timers that were supposed to do the cleaning and carts. He spent so much time coordinating that he had no time for maintenance. The night crew was also cut, so they couldn't pick up the slack. Then 2 things happened within the space of a week that told management how important he was to the store running well. First, some cleaning machines broke down. Turns out they have to be properly cleaned weekly, if left alone they gum up real bad and parts wear out quickly. A several $1,000 repair bill because he was told to prioritize coordinating part-timers over tinkering with machines. A few days later the deli lady nearly quit after the blade on the deli slicer went flying off and could have cut her face badly. Turns out that the bolt that held it in place was loose, and MG had tightened it weekly for her. When he didn't have time to do that anymore, he told management it had to be replaced for safety. Well, management didn't do that because it cost money, but they told people it was fixed. That could have been a lawsuit or criminal charges. They and deli lady got lucky. So management sat down with him and asked him why things were going wrong. MG told them point blank he needed enough time for maintenance, and someone else had to coordinate the part-time cleaners and check up on them. They were rather lazy. Management called bullcrap. They said maintenance should be easy and done quickly. MG got mad because that insulted his professionalism, and he pulled out his notebook from his back pocket. It turns out that over his 15 years he had filled the book with charts, schedules, and diagrams of how to do his job and keep things running. There were over 100 things he checked weekly or monthly. There were a lot of machines he kept in running order, some had certain things that were half broken and had to be wiggled in a certain way, etc. To be honest, a lot of these things were minor or major safety hazards, but over the years management was fine with not replacing multi-$1,000 machines if MG knew how to keep them working. As well, he did things that he should not have done, like calibrating machines for departments that should have done it themselves or contracted it out, etc. But he was a nice guy and he liked helping people. He told me that he spent about a half hour telling management about what he did, and he suspected that until then nobody had ever known how much he did. Well, he may have said a few swear words and derogatory things while telling management why he needed time to do stuff. It was not a good moment for him and he was upset. At the end he put his notebook back in his pocket and offered to take a week to write up everything he knew so that management would have written proof of why his job mattered in case a higher-up asked why they increased maintenance costs when corporate was demanding they cut costs. The multiple managers in the room looked at each other, and asked him to leave so they could talk in private. He told me, several years later, when I ran into him somewhere and had lunch with him, that he had a premonition as he walked out of the room, so he went to the back room and tossed his notebook in the garbage compactor. For good measure he then went around the store and emptied all the garbage cans and tossed those bags in so his notebook was properly buried. He was fine with it, all that information was in his head. After a few minutes later management called him back. They told him that they could not allow him to keep working there because of the level of insubordination he had showed. They said as soon as he surrendered his badge, box cutter, and notebook he would be escorted out of the building by security. They basically treated him like a criminal. Most fired people are not escorted out unless they were suspected of committing a crime that could not be proved. He handed over his badge and box cutter. They asked for the notebook. He said he threw it in the compactor. Their eyes went wide and they asked why he threw it out. He said he thought he was going to write everything up nicely on the computer from memory, so he thought he was done with the notebook. At this point management starts looking at each other worried, because they had intended to take his book, fire him, and have a less subordinate part-timer, who doesn't get expensive benefits like a full-timer, do his job. Now they couldn't. One of the managers suggested that he be allowed to write up the info before being escorted out. The others agreed. He was given the chance to be unfired just long enough to give them the info. How kind. He laughed and walked out, head held high, and management followed him to his car to make sure he left. I don't have exact numbers, but I guesstimate the store had to spend at least $20,000 or $30,000 to replace stuff that MG had kept working beyond the equipment's lifespan, and the new guy they hired had a hell of a time figuring out how things worked. To be honest, in a few cases MG had gone too far, like creating fire hazards by taping broken chargers together after rewiring them instead of tossing them, but management had never complained when he saved them money. There was also a lot of things that should have been done by the health and safety team or the departments, but they also never complained about having less work. I asked him if throwing out that notebook was illegal, but he said it was personal property to help him remember things. It was not a work-provided notebook. He was proud of what he did. His pride clearly showed in how he told the story. He said that nobody is allowed to question his professional judgment by implying he is lazy. I agree. Thanks for listening.